So we used to work at Sikaping, Victoria, not too far from here, and I think there used to be a cafe down the lane called Fika Cafe. It's a Scandinavian name, run by a lady, and that's how we got to know about this lane. And we noticed the beautiful the plants. A lot of people ask us where the plants outside. Did we grow them? It was actually growing long before that. The mural was there as well. So we stumbled upon that space. Somehow we got to know the landlord, and here we are in this space. And when we were planning ahead, we were obviously had this space upstairs, but we didn't want to have us or our staff going up and down unnecessary. We just want to serve people downstairs. So we had this beautiful space, as you can see, upstairs, and we plan to maybe do something with it. I did mention, oh, maybe we should run an Airbnb, which seems to be happening everywhere. But then Shan's like, no, let's focus on coffee. But you know what? Maybe we should help the arts out. Maybe that's one thing which we when we travel, we do go for exhibitions, and we enjoy arts ourselves. So it's like, okay, fine. So we set aside a small budget for hosting such events and having this space. And the first artist which we had was Shan's sister. Her artist name is Tatawa Art. You can find her on Instagram, and she does more abstract. She gifted us some of the art downstairs at the tables behind, and she also gave us some to set up. So she came and she set it up, nailed the nails herself, measured everything, and that was how it all started. That was the first exhibition ever when we first opened back in August. So it was quite interesting because then we got to know, we didn't know who was residing in this area, but we met a lot of people who have spent time overseas, have exposure. So they were quite appreciative of what we were doing. I think we also make a point to make a positive impact. We don't want to take away from the community. We want to contribute to the community, have a space which helps the surrounding area. And that's one of the decisions why we didn't want to open past 6 or 7 o'clock. And there's also a gallery down the road, Babramo. She exhibited with Doris for the 3rd exhibition. We have so far, this is our 5th exhibition with Marianne, and they also had exhibited downstairs and upstairs, a bit of abstract art. And so I think it's a continued evolution of things, and it's quite interesting to meet new people. I think we were quite surprised the first 6 months coming to this area of town. We didn't know who we meet. Got to know more owners and artists and people who live around this area. I think maybe we were considering it. I don't think it was a lot of happy accidents or serendipitous moments. You just meet someone who's interested in using the space, and we have the space. We don't really plan everything down to the. We go with the flow most of the time, but the walls are the way it is because it was stripped away by previous owners and it was left empty for the last few years. We did have to patch it up slightly. We had a friend from Six Sense. He's a regular with us, coffee regular. So he helped us with the aesthetics. Shan was the artistic department. She also helped out there. I just watch the numbers and talk for the camera and all. But so we just patched it up, made it look nice, and I think why we like the wall so much is because it's I think it's pure. It's the way it is. It's I don't want to use the word, but we also like wabi sabi. Japanese, like it is what it is. And why hide it? Why conceal it? Why do we have to patch it up? It's beautiful the way it is. And as you can see, I think somehow, again, serendipity, it just kind of complements the work so far we've exhibited in this space, and we're quite happy with the results. And it's just building on it one step at a time. We don't really plan everything step by step. It's just kind of putting our intention out there. Okay, I sound a bit, but I mean, we do talk to people and just meet people, and somehow things come out of it. Yeah.
I just, sorry, my husband and I just arrived here in Penang 6 months ago, and I come across the monthly art meetups on Facebook. I thought, well, that's a good place to start. And I turned up with one of these meetups, and they just said, for this particular meetup, bring some of your samples of your work. And I had just actually delivered something for framing, so I picked it up and brought it straight there. And that was the starting point. So I immediately got invited to join in the first exhibition, which was You're All Invited at China House, which is a group show. And I sold the 3 pieces I had in there, which was similar to these. These are the smaller prints. And via that connection, I was introduced to Joe and Shen, and I came to have a look at this place, and I mean, I fell in love, because, I mean, what artist wouldn't be thrilled to be able to have this as a background for any, I mean, ask Rembrandt, he would be raving too, I'm sure. I mean, it's just such a beautiful space, and these walls, I mean, they probably speak volumes, and I love it. Also, it's very, very modern. I mean, you've got all these loft kind of tendencies, and this fits in beautifully. It relates to the space, I'd say, actually, to put it the other way around. That was a given, because I've been working on this series for the past 3 years. So it was sort of more a happy accident, you could say, that I saw this space, and actually I invited Joe to come and see at my home some of my work before he invited me here, because I said, what I certainly don't want is put a lot of my art on your walls and you hating it. That would be terrible. So, well, it was a good match, I think. Yeah. And since my work is, whatever I do different things. I do printmaking, as here, and I do enameling, and I also do some collage things. And wherever I start, whichever direction I take, I always end up with houses. Okay, I'm an architect's daughter, so maybe that's the explanation. But I mean, I'm fascinated by houses. And that's also one of the things I love about Penang, all the architecture and all the murals. I mean, they're wonderful. And some of my work you could interpret as murals. The houses don't take shape from the houses here, the architecture here in Penang yet, but that might be happening in the future. And what I sort of focus on is what is a house, what goes on inside it, outside, around, behind. Sometimes my houses are, you say, transparent. You have some of the background visible right through the print. So the background is usually either a technique called chine-coller, which is, you have it here, for example, where the greenish part is actually a newsprint that I cut out, and then you put glue on that, and you ink up your copper plate, put the news cutting on top of that with glue on, and the wet printing paper on top of that, and then I roll the whole thing through my etching press. So it's in one process. And these added elements are often, I mean, what is this? It's a part of a tree. Is it the background? Is it a ghost of a tree that's visible behind something else? And quite often I hear people, they see something totally different in my work, which is, I love that when it's just not one message that screams out. It's open for interpretation, and that's also one of the reasons why I think it suits very well here. It fits, kind of. I hear, in general, very often, is that my work is very different. I mean, I am a Scandinavian. and it's apparently quite visible in what I do. It has this more what do you call minimalist approach, apparently. So, and I think that most people out here appreciate that, because it's very different from what most other artists, their way of expressing themselves in this area. Even when I look at other, for example, the 8x6 exhibition, which is one piece of 8x6 wood given to 30 different artists, and you just had to incorporate that little piece of wood in your work, and you see these 30 different works, and they are so different, and it's, of course, not just me plus 30 or 29 other local people, artists. There's a lot of mixed culture, there's everything in that hot pot down there. But still, mine is very, even though it's not a print, it's a rather colorful collage, but it's still, it has a different language somehow.
I think less can be more. I think I mean, if you look at I don't like using the word, but I guess it's a trend. You know, I think everything kind of went maximalist. You know, last 100, 200 years. You know, whenever royalty builds, when the royalty, the rich build something, they would, you know, throw in as much as they can. But I guess now we've kind of realized that simple can be beautiful as well, and just the shadow, the lines, the outline. So all these minor details which don't really shout at you, but they kind of complement each other as a whole, and it gives you a sense of serenity. I guess, like, you don't see too much things going on, or so I guess it's a feeling as well. It evokes a feeling, and it's also about, I think, the general movement towards something more simple. I mean, I don't think it's any coincidence that Marie Kondo is trending now as well, but they also think people are starting to realize that, you know, too much, we're consuming too much. Everyone's trying to, like, spare down to the bare essentials. I think in the end of the day, it comes back to our sense of living. We're trying to keep things simple, I guess. Yeah. So I enjoy these two pieces. My partner Shen really likes this one. If you come up closer later, you can see that it has an imprint of a dried plant which Marianne imprinted onto the paper. Embossed, yes. And that one as well is embossed, yes. Yeah. And she left the plant, or maybe you can explain what's yeah.
Well, this is a plant which, with the top part, with the flowers, are wilted, so completely dry, but the bottom part is 3 leaves, and they were not completely dry. So I incorporated that in my printing process, which means a lot of pressure when you roll it through. And that made actually some color from the leaves come out and settle on the paper. And so that's completely accidental, you could say. So that you've got this organic element, totally true. It's not manipulated by me at all. I just went down in the garden, picked it, and put it on the paper and rolled it through the press. And I like the combination of that. Gives an embossing effect in the paper. It blocks out the ink from my plates, and well, gives an added depth to that particular piece, I think. Yeah. And this one also.
Yeah, so very unique. I think that's very unique, and it also reminds me a bit of whenever, you know, sometimes, this sounds very European of us, but we go on evening walks around Georgetown, or in the morning when you come into the shop, you know, you can notice that in Georgetown heritage area, you can see plants growing off trees at random places on the roofs, and the sense of beauty of that is like kind of nature marrying with what we humans are doing, or you could say it's kind of fighting back against what we're doing. I mean, we do struggle. Like, you look at our walls, you can see some roots growing from it. So I guess that reminds me of 2 things. One is Georgetown, obviously, and also the struggle between man and nature. we are trying to impose our lives onto nature, or whereas nature is obviously there before us. Or so I think it's an interesting conversation there as well. You could call it environmentalism or human development. So I think there's definitely a lot of things to talk about from this art. Yeah. Besides appreciating it visually, there's a lot of other themes which can come into play. Yeah.
I use these copper plates that are first of course I cut them into shape. I don't know if you can see this here. Maybe over here. Yes, suit you. No.
Let's move over here.
I cut it into shape. I then apply a block out, a resist. Lots of different methods to do it. But in this resist, you then create your image, your pattern or your motive or whatever it is. And then the areas that are not covered by the resist are then attacked by acid when you lower it into acid. So you will get grooves of different kinds according to how you've applied your resist. And the grooves, the deeper the grooves, the more ink they can hold. So once you've finished etching it, you then ink it up and wipe it off, so you've got just the right amount of ink left on it, and put your damp paper on top of it and roll it through the press. But you can add several other techniques. You can combine traditional printmaking has a lot of basic techniques, each unique in their way, and they are old school. I mean, go back to Rembrandt; he was doing stuff like this. In those days, it was a lot more toxic than it is nowadays. Luckily, there's lots of non-toxic and at least less toxic methods you can use nowadays. And then, as I said, I applied the technique called chine-coller, where you apply another piece of paper of some kind. I have down there a piece of bamboo paper, the number 3 from the left. You can see it has bamboo. Yes, bamboo paper. Quite often I use cutouts from newspapers, literally newsprint, or old dictionaries. I love to use different languages in there. Some of them even have paper notes. There's an old French 100 franc note, or part of it, because the other part was landed up in a collage some time ago. And those you can all apply in this chine-coller process, where you glue it and print the work in one process. And then you can use the embossing method, as we said before. You can also, I mean, the sky's the limit. There's no restrictions here. So this one, for example, I've added a bit of watercolor, in fact. So that one is strictly speaking more mixed media than it's print making, but the basis of it is a print. I've also got a couple that I've used woodblock printing, Japanese woodblock printing, where I cut out my woodblock and ink it up, and again, that is actually not ink, that is watercolor according to this Japanese method. But you could use ink also, and then you've got the transparency of my copper plate print, so you can see, actually this one is leaves. You can see some of the leaves through the house, and then you can start figuring out whether the house is blocking the plant, or the plant is refusing to be blocked, or the plant is in fact on top of the house maybe, or depending on how you want to interpret it or how it speaks to you. And I think that's all the techniques I have in here at the moment. Yes, at the moment. Some of these from 3 years ago, I've overlapping plates, sort of playing with the textures and the shapes of the houses, so it becomes almost a sculpture. Or is it an old village somewhere where you, from a vantage point, you're looking at and you see all these houses overlapping each other? up to you what you find in there.
I wouldn't want to think myself or ourselves as so special, but I think the way we should think about it is, I think Georgetown is really special in terms of how close everything is. I mean, just the next street you get Howard Studio. Down the lane we have the Tea House, and then there's the independent bookstore Hikayat. Not too far away. There's China House. Everyone knows China House. So I think for me, I guess there's this idea. I think everyone has this idea at the back of their heads that we have so much potential in terms of what Georgetown can be. So, I mean, we're famous for street food, famous for street art. So I think it's just about moving, what can we move on beyond that? Can we talk about art? And art is a very neutral space to talk about many topics which maybe we're not usually comfortable about. So I think I'm interested in that. I'm interested in talking about other things. I mean, obviously we do need to be a small town, but I think sometimes there are some ideas out there which we need to talk about. I think art is a good way to start that conversation. So besides those ideals, on a pragmatic level, obviously this is a win-win situation. Obviously, it's a chance for sometimes when we're very busy downstairs, we'll just tell them, oh, why don't you come upstairs and take a look at the exhibition? You can come down and maybe we have an empty table for your group. So it's a win-win situation, and then it's an excuse. Maybe for some people, they have no excuse to see art. By having it here upstairs, or even like how Luna Bar does it, then your art is there. So it becomes part of our lives. Gradually, people, local Malaysians are exposed to this, and hopefully one day, it'll be like how it was from our last holiday in Berlin. When you go down every street, you see art. It's open there. The galleries is clear. You can look in and just see the art and admire and talk about it. And there's something to talk about, besides the usual things. So that's the big picture. That's the big picture, and also the pragmatic view. I mean, pragmatic view is create win-win situations for both space owners, artists, and their guests. And I think both can be a happy marriage. I think of ideals and really being realistic as well. Yeah.